Hello,
Hi,
this is Noa Zuk.
and this is Ohad Fishof. This week we were supposed to perform our piece Rakonto Kun in Berlin as part of a sound dance festival. Instead, we will show you some video excerpts from the piece and talk a bit about it.
Rakonto Kun was premiered last November 2019 at the Center for Contemporary Art in Tel Aviv. It was commissioned by the center as part of a larger exhibition of our work that also contained a retrospective of our video work and a series of live events that we curated.
Rakonto Kun is a piece for a room, and it's performed by 3 dancers and ourselves. We will now show you the first excerpt, which is about 12 minutes long.
As far as the soundtrack of Rakonto Kun goes, the room in which we created the piece and performed it was an important starting point. We really wanted to work into the acoustics of the room rather than against it. And we already have created a piece there for the same room in 2016. So we knew it quite well. It's a pretty quiet room, but it's also very echoey. So you can do very delicate things with sound, but it can also get messy very easily. So based on that, we decided to use mainly vocals and small percussion instrument and a little bit of flutes as the acoustic element of the soundtrack, as well as electronics. But we really wanted the acoustic elements to be central, and we wanted to have as much of the soundtrack as we can played live, and we wanted to keep the playbacks that are used simple and minimal. And the kind of reference that I had for that was the reference of a street busker playing, people who are playing solo in the street with the very basic playback coming from a small speaker. And we actually ended up using a kind of a karaoke type speaker for the vocals, which also gave it that color.
when we began creating work together, the first thing we did was apply the concept of Mickey Mousing from cinema to dance.
Mickey Mousing in soundtrack design is used to describe the style of the old cartoon film scoring, where every movement on screen received an exact sound equivalent. And you know, it was very masterful. It's amazing to watch in a sense. And the kind of world that it describes is a kind of a world without a subtext. It's a very hermetic kind of world. Now, as a term, Mickey Mousing is used negatively to describe an unsophisticated, simplistic, illustrative use of sound for image. And I guess also in modern dance, the tendency historically was to move away from the tight relationship of music and dance of the ballet, as well as, you know, the rhythm consistency of most of folk dance. And this kind of opening of the gap between music and music and dance, was seen as a new space for aesthetic innovation and also for psychological depth.
But when we starting working together, we wanted to do the opposite and glue movement and sound together again, in an almost reactionary way. We want to show you now 2 minutes from the first solo we've made, and the solo called Nothing Free.
My sculpture is heavy and lonely. Its ears are bleeding and its earlobes are too big for its face. Yesterday, it tried to run away, but only got as far as where it was. Already standing.
Looking back at it, I think that for us, for our creative partnership, starting from music and sound being glued as one has a kind of a symbolic value, because it's almost as if we started from year zero of dance and sound, and grew from there.
I feel that in every new creation, there are both new themes and ideas, as well as further development of old ones. We always try to teach ourselves new ways of moving, counting, of sounding that are different from our habitual ways, as a mean to expand ourselves. This is when we often seek inspiration in other cultures.
We are no anthropologists or scientists. The modest understanding we can aspire to, if any, of other cultures is out of subjective impression and experience. But, you know, of course, in different dance cultures, physicality is organized differently. The movement patterns are different, rhythms, counts are structured differently, and stuff that is, you know, can be kind of second nature to one culture is a huge effort for another. And we use this gap in ability and in perception as a beginning of compositions. So we would try to teach ourselves and teach the dancers different kinds of musicality, kind of imported types of musicality. And we always end up in some sort of a failure, of course. Things always get distorted in the process of translation, naturally. But
it's already interesting.
Yeah, and it's become something else, and from that we start growing this kind of choreographic hybrids, and it's a way for us to kind of push ourselves beyond ourselves and expand our vocabulary possibilities.
rhythm scores are also something we do sometimes. Starting off a rhythmic sequence that can be expressed both in movement and in sound. In these cases, the answer to the question, what comes first, music or dance, is that they are created together according to a mutual template.
But I think even when we do start sometimes with movement or with or vice versa, both sound and movement are being created in the studio during rehearsal time. Yeah, during rehearsal time with the dancers around, kind of on the fly. And normally I would try to create as much music as I can in this way during rehearsals. And I try only to take stuff back to the sound studio for kind of second stage refinements.
In the creative process, the real reason for doing something can often come after the fact. You might find the very core of an idea only after working on it for a long time. There is a section in Rakonto Kun that it's a kind of intermission where Ohad sing a song while in the background there is a projection of faces, strange hybrid characters like an unfamiliar race made out of different parts of the faces of 5 of us mixing together.
Is a good example for this kind of extremely non-linear process or chain of events. Like with every new piece, you have to give an image for publicity quite early, way before the piece is finished. And we had this idea that we wanted to take a picture of the 5 of us as a family. So we went to this place where they do high quality, analog, old-fashioned studio portraits. And when we got the image, we realized that the idea is not right for the piece. So we had a load of high quality photos of ourselves that we couldn't use. And I just started to play with them and just sending the results to everybody just for fun. But only later when that song appeared in the process, and we had this idea of including a kind of a composed intermission in the piece, we realized that we can actually use those photos as a kind of a slow slideshow.
All except one of the texts in Rakonto Kun are spoken or sang in Esperanto, the utopian international language invented by Ludwig Zamenhof in the late 19th century. Esperanto is based on Latin, Spanish, and English. So it sounds, for most people, kind of familiar and alien at the same time.
Using Esperanto in the piece enabled us to use language while focusing on its form and on its evocative powers, on the imagination, without having to present a specific literal story. So in that way, the relationship between language and meaning become very similar to the relationship between sound and meaning, the relationship between dance and meaning.